So I know we were just talking about this on the phone not too long ago, Chuck, but
Yeah.
what I was saying, I want to talk about disclosure, and you were like, I don't really have any thoughts on this thing today. So I'm going to ask you, hey, what are your thoughts on disclosure? How about
Well,
that?
other than the fact that I'm tired of hearing the stuff that I've been talking about for almost a decade, and it's
Yeah,
finally like popping up. Not just the alien stuff, but even I mean, the conservative side kind of jumped on early, jumping on the whole Fauci and all of that stuff. I mean, everything's just blowing up. House of Cards is falling. A lot of people are dying. I mean, it's like at this point, you can't even hide the fact. I mean, did you hear about LeBron James' son had a
yeah,
cardiac arrest and all of this stuff? And a lot of celebrities having strokes, a lot of sports people falling dead after the jab. He had this famous guy that I follow. He's like 30 or 33 years old. Of course,
33. Nice
yeah,
number.
just died.
Mm.
And bros, what's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
Oh,
Uh, and
yeah.
so yeah, so he just died. I mean, he's a huge dude, and I actually follow some of his tips for building the arms and everything. And he literally just talked about um how he was getting the boosters and everything, and he got his blood work done all the time. All of the uh weird stuff they found in his blood after all the boosters and everything, and the
Mm.
doctor was like, oh, the doctor himself was like, well, that's from the jabs, man, that's from the boosters, dude. And then
Yeah.
not too long after that, goodbye. it's
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 so
very sad.
crazy. It's so crazy because it feels like over the course of the last couple weeks, so many things, like big things, important things, things that would be headline news even just a couple years ago. All of a sudden, it's like all out in the news, and it's all happening all at once, like a big old flood. Um, and then today, I completely forgot that they were having the hearings today until it was actually happening, and I started seeing some alerts pop up on things I follow, and I was like, oh, that's happening right now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to get into that, and I think when we were talking, I feel like there's a lot more connections going today between all those different things than just it's not just disclosure. Disclosure is a thing, but there's a lot of different pieces to all of this that I think are going on that's worth taking a look at. But in case someone d- was not aware, or you're watching a restream or something, we actually had a hearing today, congressional hearing, where they talked about UFOs, UAPs, and aliens to the degree that I haven't really heard before, at least not to that level, to that extent. Have you been able to listen to any of the clips or anything, Chuck?
I have not. I've only seen memes about it. Like I said, on that aspect, I was a bit disconnected. I really didn't get into it, but oh, you got a little tweet here. So yeah,
Yeah,
what do you got,
this
brother?
is this is one of the best summations, I think. This is from Timothy Alberino, who I'm sure many people are familiar with.
Hmm.
He has a stake in this sort of topic because of the book that he has released, which is it's a great book to read through, honestly. But check this out. He says here is the headline from today's congressional hearing on UFOs, all in caps. So he's yelling this. I imagine him yelling this as he's tweeting. The alien presence is real and constitutes a national security threat. We have arrived, my friends.
Yeah.
So I mean, for the individuals who are looking into this, who are watching this topic, this is a big day.
Right.
Um, I've been looking at it, I've been watching over it, but even today, I forgot that it was today, what day it was. But there are a lot of people who are looking for this, who are longing for this sort of a thing. So today they did have this congressional hearing, and I'm not going to play any clips or anything like that. We're going to talk about it. I'm sure they're everywhere if you wanted to go and look for it. And definitely UFO Twitter, which is a thing. UFO Twitter, certain handles you can go in there, and they were all abuzz today. All the
Hmm.
things that were going on. So it's a pretty big deal.
Right.
for a lot of folks.
Yeah, Enoch's asking, did they talk about Nephilim? Well, I mean, pretty much. But
Here's
no, they
what's
never
so
said
funny. Yeah.
Nephilim. They never said, of course, Nephilim, and I'm sure and I'm sure he knows what's up. But yeah, it's kind of wild to just to continue to see these conversations, right? They just keep popping up, and at this point, like we spoke about this even in the last episode we did, I think the Avengers episode we just did, because it's not, I believe it to be now more of a control of the narrative, right? It's gonna really weave into, in my opinion, it's already set up to weave into kind of theosophy, the new age and all of that stuff, and the universe as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the government is gonna slowly push into it. Like it's gonna get into this spiritual world, and I don't know, give people that spirituality aspect of reality, but in an unbiblical way, and
Yeah.
introducing that through this alien phenomenon and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think we're going to get into some of the details here, but that's definitely the track that it's going. And so if this had happened 5 or 10 years ago, well, first of all, I don't think it would ever have happened 5 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you'd have anything like this coming out. I think this is the time, and it's a time for a particular reason. But I think one of the most popular TV shows on TV right now has to be over 15 seasons is Ancient Aliens. This is something that's in the forefront of people's minds, not just in those who are looking at fringy things anymore. This used to be a
Well,
fringe topic, but it's not
we have
anymore.
we have to think about the timing of these shows and movies, right? It's just
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame was not too long ago. Endgame, like we were at the end game,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I've heard this even talked about in the circles of the people who are disclosing, like, oh, this is the end game. This is a game changer for all of humanity. And so this is not a coincidence to me. This show has been set up well over a decade now. I think it's close to a decade. I think that is show.
Yeah.
I know at least the Avengers and all that has been setting it's been setting up for a long time.
Yeah.
And like you said, it wouldn't have happened, 10 years ago. But now that we have all of the propaganda set, very successful propaganda, everyone has been incepted.
Yeah.
We're ready. We are ready.
And I think if obviously we'd have to ask someone like Derek Gilbert, he'd hardly have those numbers right off the top of his head, but I think the numbers around, depending on the study, depending on the survey, depending on the poll that you look at, somewhere between 45 and 70% of Americans, most of these are done in America, these different surveys, um, they hold to a worldview that includes UFOs. They
Mm.
they believe that UFOs are a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to, where it starts to separate is if you ask someone, what is a UFO? Obviously, it's an unidentified flying object, but what is it? And when you start to talk about, is it a spacecraft? When you start to go down those routes, that's where you start to see some differences between what people think and what people believe. Um, Before this show, probably a couple hours ago, I jumped onto UFO Twitter, and there was a Spaces that was going on. If you haven't done the Spaces, it's basically like a live podcast. I think it was supposed to compete with Clubhouse. Remember that thing that everybody was doing for about a month and then forgot about? Where it's basically a live podcast, but no one else can talk. But in Spaces, they had UFO Twitter in there. There's probably about 150 people in there listening live, and they were talking about this, and I happened to cut in at just the right place because it was exactly what I was trying to glean, which is asking the real question: what is disclosure, and what are we hoping for with disclosure? And so a couple of the things that came up is disclosure is how they defined it, and these are the people who are in this thing every day. This is their thing, and they're saying it's when proof or evidence is presented where the whole world accepts the reality of UFOs, aliens, ETs, fill in the blank, what you want there. That's what their definition of disclosure is.
Mm-hmm.
What it
In other
really
words,
is getting people, everyone else to finally acknowledge, yes, this thing is true. Go ahead.
yeah. I was just gonna say, in other words, an ideological subversion, right?
Yeah,
You know?
and for them, you gotta imagine some people who have been in this community for a decade, 2 decades, longer even. For them, it is someone finally acknowledging and saying out loud, "You were right."
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
And
no.
yeah.
The thing that kind of concerns me is that there's a lot of truther movements that are like I told you so. They're growing really like in crazy numbers, right? Um, but like I said earlier, they're leaning towards the new age spirituality, anything but
Mm,
creation, right? And it almost seems like shows like Ancient Aliens will throw the Bible a bone here and there to the untrained ear
yeah.
by saying, even the Bible says, I think Jesus was an alien and things like that. And so then some, the people that sort of believe in the Bible are kind of followers. They're like, oh, well, no way. Even the book I kind of never read says it, and so then they, fall in line with, whatever they say. And it concerns me because even, we've been doing those real talk episodes,
Yeah.
and we mentioned a reel that ninjas are butterflies posted
Mhm.
because they're really tracking on the whole Giants Genesis 6 and everything. And they just reposted something about like aliens and disclosure. And it was like they went whole they basically said that one of the guys said, I basically believe that aliens are what Christopher Nolan said
Mm,
in Interstellar, which is just evolved humans in the future interacting with the past of what humans used to be, and so they're just helping us evolve into our next chapter, which is really just one of the many forms of evolution and kind of the new age ideas that are going out there. Oh, it's time traveling human beings that are really the aliens, and aliens are just, it's almost like a Prometheus story. It's a
yeah.
mixture of a lot of stuff, right? So again, very popular show. It's growing so much, real good. And I mean, I'm even willing to share some of their information, but again, they always take these sharp turns all of a sudden. I feel it's like when I watch a leftist show, that it's
Mm,
pretty good for like the first season or two, and then all of a sudden it gets super woke, like they sneak it in there, but once they got you hooked. That's what I feel like a lot of these new age truthers are doing, where they're just busting out all the stuff that's real and true, and then suddenly they're like, oh, and Christianity is also false, and Jesus is not real, and things like
right.
that. So it's just something to be mindful about, because all of that stuff is incredibly debunkable. Christianity cannot be debunked, and the more you look into it, the more it stands firm. So even when you research the weird, by the way, because that's how I ended up with Fire Theft Radio, the more you look into that stuff, it actually just points right back to the Bible anyways. So
It does, and I think that's you touched on a couple things that I think are really important, and for a lot of people, the idea of disclosure is really, really important to them because, what it does is it allows for them to become the authority. So for the longest time, they've been on the outside and then pushed out to the side, but they're the ones who've been looking and studying and reading reports. They've been following in the news, which was a lot more difficult 20 years ago than it is today. But they've been following along with this thing. And what I heard actually when I was still listening to the spaces is there was actually at the point where they were talking about what's the point of disclosure, they brought up this idea of displaying physical proof. And that's where I started to hear a schism within the
mm,
group because some of them would say, oh, we want them to disclose what they know. And of course, in the hearings, they talked about actual physical, not just craft, but recovered bodies, which we'll talk about in a second, of how they talk. It was very weird. But they mentioned bringing out the evidence. Like that's part of disclosure. That's part of what they want is for the evidence to be brought out, to be brought forth. And when you do that, all of a sudden there were other people who said, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if we want that. And what they were getting at was there was so many of them in the community whose experiences are not physical. They're mental. They would say, um, there's a phenomena called a walk-in where they try to communicate, and then an entity, a ET entity, as they would say, right, an alien entity would enter into them and give them information. Depending on your worldview, you might think it's something different, but that for a lot of them, they'd say, no, we don't want physical disclosure, because that it's almost like they compete with others who want the physical proof,
Mm,
to where if they roll out a body, it's almost discounting all of their experiences and the things that they've been studying.
mm, mm.
So it's very interesting how there are some people who are not excited about this type of disclosure.
Right.
They don't want it to happen in
Mhm.
that way. They don't want that to be the totality,
Right.
because it's almost picking a brand and saying this is the kind of disclosure that they want,
Yeah.
right?
But you know what's funny is that it is a topic that both politically, both sides can come to some sort of agreement that there is something out there. And it's funny though that I see the right kind of latch onto it, and immediately there's that old kind of, and I say that old hat way because I've been there, done that. The old hat, all aliens are just demons. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there really is no other questioning. So even there's already like a setup to where there's an acknowledgement to something, but they're already setting up what they're going to be against, the different ideas of what they're going to be against. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
already like setting the foundation for more arguments, like, oh, we agree to it, and there's still going to be a dichotomy, there's still going to be this sort of politicized sort of conversations from the left and the right, just because you don't look into it a little bit more, and it's way deeper than, oh, it's just demons. It's way deeper than that, and there's
Right.
much more details. So in doing so, as a Christian, I would urge you to not bust that line out and do a little bit more research. Probably read that Timothy Alberino book, probably read Derek Gilbert's work, probably
Yeah.
read Dr. Michael Heiser's work
Yeah.
even his unseen realm stuff. But if you read all of those things, oh my gosh, man, it's going to open you up and give you a lot more ammunition to have a better conversation than just those are demons. Shut up about anything else, because then you're going to have no other conversations that are fruitful, in my opinion. When it comes to people believing it's wrong. I see you grabbing some books. What do you recommend
Grabbing
there?
some books. So even when we're talking about disclosure and some of these different things, I've got a couple books here, and we got a comment I want to get to here, but Walking Among Us by let me try and get that there in the right spot, by Dr. Jacobs. The
Yeah.
Alien Plan to Control Humanity. This is not the book that you think it would be, but he
Mhm.
is a well-regarded scholar who just took people giving their experiences seriously. So his conjecture is that aliens are already among us. They would be, a lot of them would be among those who would probably be excited for some kind of disclosure, but would say their experiences can't be verified or validated by a physical disclosure of
Mhm.
bodies in a craft, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you got this one. This one is interesting. I haven't been able to read through this one. This is from Annie Jacobson, called Phenomena.
Mm.
Now this is interesting because uh, the the title of this is The Secret History of the U.S. Government's Investigation into Extrasensory Perception and Psychokinesis. But this then would fall in line with that. This is part of the crowd that wants disclosure and says it's not physical. They would say, what about the government going into psychokinesis, telekinesis, extrasensory perception? They're already delving into the things that you have no physical evidence for. So
Mhm.
why are we so latched on to this idea of physical disclosure? Because that's not the totality of it. So even in the disclosure world, there are things that they're saying, this is not what we were hoping for necessarily. Not everybody likes this. So let's go ahead and get this up here. But we've got a Putris who commented here. It says, bruh, I'm going to read it in the intended voice. Bruh, aliens are exactly what we've been educated by through movies. Jesus was a Navi, bruh. You weren't there, bruh, so you don't know. and that's from bruh who's never read the Bible. So
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
it's all of a sudden everybody's an
he
expert,
says that
right?
jokingly, but I've had very similar conversations with people that are so like adamant about, no, this is what it is, man. And then I am in California, so they are saying, bro, no, dude, for reals, dude, like Jesus, dude, like he's so like you don't even know, dude. Like, but like, exactly. And then yeah, he's never read the Bible, but he has all of these conclusions. Hello, bonjour. Are
Oh,
you French?
hello.
We got some.
Yeah.
Is it daytime in France? Bonjour. Je m'appelle
Yeah.
Carlos.
Actually, yes,
Yeah.
it is. I think it is.
Très bien. Je
Maybe.
parle plus du français, mais j'oublie beaucoup de vocabulaire parce que je n'ai
Glad to have
pratiqué
you
pas.
here, Taryn. I don't know if that was
So
gibberish. I don't know French well enough.
that was pretty
Um,
good. So if I
that
say
was
so
pretty
myself,
good.
but yeah, no, that is definitely conversations that I've had with folks over there. So or here in Southern California, it's just it's crazy because we'll latch on to these ideas, the power of movies, the power of
Yeah.
media, the power of music. It's a real thing, man.
And I think it's a much bigger deal than a lot of people give credit. It's a lot of things that we talk about as far as predictive programming. And Taryn and I actually did a show on the what was it, the lie. And yeah, so going into some of these other areas here, I wanted to just highlight this too is the number of tweets. So I know that this isn't very scientific, but uh, you can always sort of gauge where the attention of everyone is by the number of tweets or the trending tweets that you see. And so the time when I pulled these numbers here, because I wasn't sure I'd be able to grab it when we were on, alien, the word alien was trending 302,000 tweets, UFO 139,000 tweets. So that gives you an idea. That's quite a few, right? Unique tweets. But the word term, when McConnell all of a sudden froze in front of the cameras, that had 202,000 tweets in connection with that, to give you an idea. Real Madrid, which I don't even know what the news was, had 141,000 tweets, to kind of give you an idea. But one of the things too is Hunter Biden, 544,000 tweets. So blew everything else out of the water. So to say that disclosure is the biggest thing happening on the internet, it's taking over, isn't quite true.
Mhm.
But I think what's happening is actually really, 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 really important. And I think it's because of how the answers were given. So questions were being asked of this guy Grush, who is talked about like a whistleblower, but I don't know that he really fits the actual definition of a whistleblower. But that's a side thing. We'll probably look into that a little bit more. But Grush is sort of this main guy because he gave the most specific testimony. He's willing to give sort of the closest sort of answers. But some of the questions he was asked. So this is a very specific question. Has this came from one of the congressmen? Has our government made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials? Flat out question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he basically says, "Oh, I can't give an answer for that." And so she had to ask in a different way. So what you get is this almost like a cat and mouse. Like, well, you got to ask me in a certain way so that I'm able to talk. If this is a whistleblower, why all the uh, charades? Why do you have to ask just the right question? Why? If this is really a whistleblower, why the game?
All right.
Why not just an answer?
Mm-hmm.
So then she asks, uh, she rewords what she's trying to say is, did we recover? I think she says bodies, but he answers biologicals. We found biologicals. And she said, are they human? He said, non-human biologicals. What does
Mm-hmm.
that mean?
Well, when I did see that little clip, right? And immediately for most people, it's like, oh, that means it's extraterrestrial because I believe that's the programming. But if you listen to if you've been listening to like L.A. Marzulli for the longest, I mean,
Oh,
the
forever, right?
idea is that the abductions happening to people, and the reason why people are experiencing like these experiments or uh, things like that, is because they're taking human DNA and they're making biological meat suits that are not human
Right.
for these entities that are transdimensional, or I would say spiritual, to
Mhm.
embody or to possess. Because I mean, it would make sense because it goes back all the way to the Book of Enoch
Right.
and these disembodied spirits that no longer have bodies. I believe the alien abduction program probably could have something to do with that, and that's why they phrased it that way. In my opinion, it's possibly that you know that what's it called, the remnants, or the what they're saying is that. But most people will say, well, no, they're not from this earth, or they're not biological, or they're biological, so that means extraterrestrial or whatever, you know.
Right, and I think that's the wordplay, that's the game that
Hmm.
gets played is we're saying all these words and half truths, and I shouldn't say half truths because that makes it sound like he's lying. So, for instance, we recovered non-human biologicals. It could be a dog, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so
That
in the
could mean a
50s,
lot of things, man.
in the 50s, 60s, right, as they were sending things up, right, there's the famous dog that was sent from the USSR up into space, even became part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, it's kind of played up. It's part of pop culture. We sent this dog into space. Well, they
Hmm.
could have recovered a dog's body, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Be non-human biological.
Hmm.
She said pilots. He said non-human biological. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's this game going back and forth that just seems so funny. Yeah, meat suits, Pizza the Hut, predictive programming, exactly. Uh, congressional hearings brought to you by Pizza Hut. No one can out Pizza the Hut. Right? That's the tagline. I think that was the tagline for the congressional meeting. Just joking. But the this idea though, and I think this is why this is kind of a big deal. So one of the things that we kind of talked about before the show was there's several things that are going on today that seem very weird. Like they're begging someone to give definitions. So you have this where disclosure, where they are looking for people in the government to acknowledge something, or they would say in the scientific community to acknowledge something. You have people who already, like we saw with the tweets, 544,000 tweets about Hunter Biden, not to get political or anything like that, but there are a lot of people who are like, the evidence that is being presented is insane. It's a mountain of evidence, and yet, you have people who are saying, "Oh, not guilty," because
Mm,
they want and they need to have someone actually point to it and say, "No, this is this is the way that we think it is." And because you can't get someone in the court to actually say it, people get all bent out of shape,
mm,
right? So, and there's other examples. Well, those are the two that I'll use. What seems to be happening is, and this is why I think you have the back and forth and not straight answers, is you have people who are saying, were there aliens? Does the United States government know that there are aliens, and are they in contact with them? Well, I can't really tell you. I don't know. So what does that mean? Probably because we got not all the answers we wanted. Probably in about 4 or 5 months, we're going to have another one of these. We're going to get a
mhm.
little bit more info.
I'm
Oh, we're going to find a
excited to
little bit
see what
more.
happens during election. It's gonna get wild,
Oh,
bro.
I
That's
don't
probably
even
gonna be
know.
the wildest. We're gonna get everything we've ever like. We should do the conspiracy theory bingo thing. Like, is it gonna be zombies finally full blast? Because there's like, these reports about uh uh military actually already working on getting rid of zombies in certain areas, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff happening around the world, right? So what's gonna happen in this
Oh,
next
yeah.
battle versus red versus blue? We're gonna have another virus. I saw posted, and I think they removed it, but I saw it posted on the John Hopkins, which they had posted already about Corona before it happened,
Hmm.
and they had
Yeah, that's
posted
true.
about 2025, which is around election, right? If I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
about a mutated version of it. Like, what would happen if it mutates in something called spars? So, I'm saying it here and now. If we start hearing spars coming around, which is some form of mutated coronavirus, I'm not going to be surprised because I had already seen it in these official websites
Yeah.
of, oh, I wonder what would happen if we have a spars, like, I'm like, come on, guys. Like, I feel like legit they have that nerdy dude from The Simpsons. That,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, yeah, and then he's like making all these plans and stuff. But anyways, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we should have Mr. Petrus on at some point to maybe talk about some of these virus type things and
Oh
zombies.
yeah,
He loves talking about that.
oh yeah, no, you got to check out Enoch's YouTube over there. It's loaded with stuff
Pretty sure
for
he's just
sure.
on Rumble now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe he can
Oh, that's
confirm.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No.
But so here's the thing with all these different areas that people are just begging for this. What this turns into is there's a whole community of people, 40 to 70% of people really have this as part of their worldview already. Why are they begging for the government to tell them what they know? Why?
Mhm.
Why, if this is something that people know to be true, or they at least believe it to be true, right? Why do they need the government, the scientific community to acknowledge it?
Right.
Why?
The very, especially on the right, the very one you want less of, the very one you don't trust, the very one that you're against. Why would you want them to echo chamber something you believe already?
What? Yeah, why? And there are so many different areas where it's I'd love to see the government come clean on all the information they have on lots of different things. But why is it that this is the thing? We have to have them acknowledge this particular thing, right? Why this? And I think part of it has to do with on one side, I think for the community, they want that acknowledgement that we knew it, right? I think they want that. But on the government side, the more people ask and the more people beg, eventually, when they tell them something, guess who has all the power? It's the government. It's whatever they say, it's whatever
Mhm.
definition they give. When they finally do it, because we waited long enough and we badgered them long enough, they finally told us. And so, whatever they say, that will be taken as that's the truth. That's the disclosed truth. That's why you have that very weird the people who want physical disclosure and the other people who say that their experiences with ETs are completely different. They don't have anything to do with that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Why? Why would they want disclosure? They don't, because they already think the government can't define that for them,
Mm.
right? Um, so when you think of it that way, what we're looking at, this might be a massive psyop. And I'm not saying at all that the people who are sitting in front of uh, the committee there that they're lying. I'm not saying that at all. I would not put it past any kind of government or intelligent or military agency to show someone what they want them to see.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that they're lying. What I'm saying is that they're trying to control that aspect of the narrative. They're trying to control the story by controlling the definition. And I think they pushed that the last hearings that they had where they came out with the term UAP. Hey, we're just going to change it. It doesn't matter that there's
Right.
decades and decades worth of people who have given testimony already, who have given stories. We're not going to acknowledge any of those things, but we're just going to move forward with a brand new definition. That doesn't make any kind of sense to me if they're really disclosing anything.
Yeah, that definitely felt like specific. Like, let's change it up. And their explanation, as always, it's like, well, I don't know. It was just so lame. I remember hearing it. And I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
some stuff is just unidentified aerial, and it was just, oh, okay. Well, why'd you do that? It's necessary.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's so when we talk about disclosure, I don't think we're going to have a time where they're going to come clean on what they have or what they know. I think there will be a time where they will allow people to think that they've come clean on stuff. And there's
Mhm.
going to be enough of that community who's satisfied with that that they'll move on. But I really do think that it is that other side of things. It is the supernatural aspect, or they actually have a different name for it. They have a different term for it. Before we do that, be a guest. I'm never going to sleep again. Found out a new info on Adreno.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy. Ooh.
Well, I'm gonna call. Wasn't that what's that movie with Johnny Depp?
Wonka.
Fear and Loathing in Las
Oh,
Vegas. Is
yeah.
that
Fear and Loathing. Yes.
is where he actually talk about it in the movie? And
Yeah,
they
that clip's
make
been
it.
brought up a few different places, so I've listened
Yeah,
to it. Yeah, yeah.
I'll just name the episode that already. I already got the episode title.
Oh, it's
Let's
already
do it,
there.
bro.
Boom! Look at that, booking live on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, Enoch, feel free to put your Rumble channel name in the chat. We'll shout it out. But one of the big aspects of this that they call it in the UFO community, they call it the phenomena. That is the term that they use for it. And that's where they throw all of the sightings, not the physical craft, but like the orbs, the walk-ins, the communication. They would say the telepathic communication or the empathy communication that they have, the empathetic communication. All of those things that don't fit into a materialistic worldview, they call the phenomena. We would call it, from a biblical worldview, we would call it the supernatural or the spirit realm, right? Something to that effect. I know if Alberino ever heard us say that he does not like the term supernatural because it has been so pushed around and so changed that it doesn't even it's not a quality word to use even for some of the instances that we see in scripture, this idea of supernatural, because it for most people to think that it's devoid of any physicality, but that's not even the case really either. So we do have to be careful with the terms. We have to be careful with what's stated. And I'm still holding to this idea that they're going to come up with some sort of evidence from some archaeological site. It's going to be some ancient piece of technology, some ancient thing that they find. And they're going to bring it out and say, look, this was here 1,000 years ago.
Right.
2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago.
Right. Or prior to human existence, right? And like, especially if you're, I don't know, a Ken Ham follower and you really like, you're about exactly,
the exact 6,000 year timeline, those type of things.
And so if there is that type of Christian out there, well, I'm not talking crap. If you follow that, that's great. That's fine. I have no issues with that. I don't to me, it doesn't matter. It could be that, or it could be a lot longer. It doesn't shake my faith at all. It doesn't need to be literal for me. That's just me. We've had that conversation on the show already. So go back.
Sure, we'll have it again.
Yeah. So, but that being said, if you do belong to that camp where it's a very young earth, and then you're not really solid in your faith in some way or another, and they bring this up, well, this has been around 10,000 years or 16,000, 10, 20,000, whatever.
Yeah, and they will do it. They will bring the dating out. Yeah.
They'll carbon data, yada, yada, yada. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, this predates the Bible. This predates, civilization according to biblical understanding, and it's going to be blowing your mind, quote unquote. And so that's what I'm saying. Read your Bible, folks, and understand that really you don't have to hold to those things so aggressively, other than Jesus Christ being our Lord and Savior and God. I mean, everything else you should probably hold with an open hand. Like, take it easy,
And some of the things that we're talking about here, these are not new ideas. If anyone's watched Battlestar Galactica, and I mean like all the way through, all the way to the end where they finally like achieve the goal.
Yeah. If there's any nerds out there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if there's any nerds out there,
that's a compliment, by the way.
It is today. Yeah, it is now. But this sort of idea of ancient humans and connection with the gods and different things like that has been there since that time. Obviously you've got Stargate, you've got some of these other things that have been going on for, long time. They've talked about a lot of these different things. So this stuff's already been out there. These theories have already been out there. These ideas and concepts have already been there. There's got to be some reason why they name everything in the space programs after ancient gods, right? So there is some sort of connection. They are making those connections themselves. What I find to be so interesting is you have a whole group of people that latch on to things within the disclosure community, the UFO community, who do so because they've had what we would call supernatural experiences And I can't help but think that as disclosure starts becoming more of a topic that people talk about in the physicality of things, that you'll find a group of people who feel somewhat alienated from that group. If you are a Christian and you're listening to this, if you're a believer, we have to open up our conversations wider. It has to be bigger. There are people who are asking all the right questions of all the wrong people, of all the wrong communities, and they're getting answers that don't make sense. The
Yeah.
biblical worldview does make sense. It
Or
makes
or
sense of all these things.
or throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of answers. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
it's just like now very dismissive. This is a topic that if you explore biblically, there's actually a lot of information. So you can't be afraid to get into the weird, the fringe, the conspiracy theories, because
Yeah,
the Bible
exactly.
is full of stuff like that. I mean, there's all kinds of conspiracies in there. I mean, come on. Michael, I sorry, no, Enoch.
Yeah.
Uh, the rundown of our reality, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube. But
Yep.
this is your show. You guys are too kind. No, not at all, man. I really like your videos. I like the fact that you take the time to put all those things together. I hate editing. That's why the show now I have it set up so sweet. We make zero, little to no mistakes. The music's already programmed. I get it done. And the last episode we released with Laura Sanger, she was like, "Oh my gosh, this was the quickest episode
It's
ever
already out.
released that
Yeah.
I've ever recorded.
We might
People
as well
have
just do
recorded
them
me much."
live.
And she was, yeah, I'm getting, well, that's the whole point. I'm trying to get so good that I can just bust a canary cry news talk, and
Boom.
just,
Yeah.
and we're just doing this live because YouTube over there grew quite a bit. There's a lot more followers, and I just don't post anything over there. So I need to
Yeah.
help those folks out over
Just ignoring you all. But with all that to say, I think that we forget that people who are looking into these things, they're not looking into these things because they're nuts. They're not crazy. It's because they're having very specific either experiences themselves, or they're trying to deal with hearing the testimony or the story of someone else who's had an experience. And if you don't have that pre-wiring, if you don't have that Christian or that biblical worldview, what else are you supposed to do with all this information?
there.
And I think that we a lot of times as Christians are withholding of actual truth because we say, they're not gonna believe that. They're not really gonna think that. And we almost recontextualize, or we screen everything, or we restate things in how we think other people might perceive it, instead of just saying, you know what? Some things are true. And if you go and you test it, you will find out that these things are true. And people are having those experiences, and we have to be willing to look into these areas, to jump into these topics, and to bring with us a biblical worldview, because most of us have tested this worldview and we know that these things are true because we have tasted these things. We know. And so we have to bring that with us because there are people who are asking questions. They want to know what is going on. They're confused. And if we don't speak up and talk about the things that we know that are true, people will get swept away.
Yes, indeed. Do you remember the title of the book Dr. Michael Heiser wrote about that was related to Stranger Things?
Yeah.
What is it called? The World Turned
Um,
Upside Down, isn't it?
World, yes. And it's somewhere back here.
Amazing book. That is a book that I recommend you read. And the way it's presented is how I would recommend Christians have a conversation with other people that are into the supernatural. Because if they're into the weird, if they're into the fringe, into the supernatural, goodness gracious, that's the foundation of a lot of the Bible. Okay.
It really
So if,
is.
if they're already, if their mind is already open to the weird, the fringe, the supernatural, the spiritual, and you just give it some proper context, you can really do a lot for the kingdom there. And that book is just an amazing setup, and in my opinion, because it shows really that that show has brought a lot of concepts together from the spiritual world, the unseen realm,
Mm,
into a show, and it's presented it in a way that is so fascinating and entertaining, and it's a worldwide phenomenon, speaks for itself. But you can use that as an evangelism tool And I was gonna backtrack a little bit and just to mention, I don't also think it's a coincidence that the whole Ant-Man stuff presented the
Mm,
quantum realm quite a bit
yeah.
because I feel like it's a hijacking of the spiritual world. If you saw Quantum Mania, it really just the biggest thing I got from Quantum Mania is that there are sentient beings, bodies, these creatures, these sentient beings living in another realm that you cannot see. It's like the unseen realm, right?
Yeah.
The quantum realm, right? And even the antagonist, the main guy, the conqueror of the movie lives in this unseen realm,
Mhm.
taking over the spiritual world, taking over the quantum realm, so that they can take over the physical realm. There it is, the world turned upside down. Finding the Gospel in Stranger Things by Michael S. Heiser.
There
An
it is.
amazing book. My daughter read it and her mind was blown, man. She read it when she was 12. She's now 16. No, 13. She was like 13 or 14, and then she's now 16. And it was really comprehensive. Like she understood it. So it's an easy read. I highly recommend it. But again, I just wanted to bring up that whole quantum thing because I feel like the world is ready. The stage is set and we can
Right.
take advantage of it. And I know that the devil, Satan, the opposer, these evil beings mean it for evil, but we can use it for good because the world, the stage is getting set for this new world order religion, and we can take advantage of that and bring people into the kingdom of God.
Absolutely. And I think we'll probably do some more, at least on these streams, to talk about that and some of those connections and be a lot more explicit about some of those
Hmm.
things. So
Hmm.
absolutely. Chuck, why don't you plug your stuff
Yeah.
in case someone
So you'll
doesn't know?
find, yeah, you'll find this episode on firetheftradio.com. Any podcatcher like Podomatic. It's on Spotify now as well. So if you don't like to download stuff, you just want to stream it off Spotify, you can do that over there. Leave us ratings, reviews. That helps a ton. It helps so much. Thank you everybody who has tuned in and given us more than 3 stars. It's really helped push the algorithm, or as we like to say, spread the fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find us over there and email me, message me through Fire Theft Radio, Instagram or Facebook, or firetheftradio@gmail.com.
Yeah. And you're on the Twitter as well, right?
I personally am. I don't have any connection to the FTR thing. We're trying to work that out because it was Omar's uh, Twitter account. I have a Chuck FTR. If you want to go ahead and follow me, I don't really post much there. I
Yeah.
just got Twitter just to get it. To be honest, I really don't use it. But
But
for future reference, we are gonna attempt to connect the Fire Theft Radio account, the Fire Theft Radio YouTube account to these live streams because that is the goal. We are planning to do quite a bit of real talks, which I feel are our next stage of Fire Theft Radio. And I just will announce now on your show, um, Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2 episode coming at the end of August. Gary Wayne is
yeah.
coming back. And by the way, many years ago, I wouldn't say many, but a
Yeah.
couple years back, when he came on the show, Gary Wayne announced for the first time in any podcast, I'm going to have to make Genesis 6 Part 2. And he said that on the show. And I told him, hey, well, you got to come back. A few years later, he didn't forget. Doesn't matter. I love that man. He does not care. He'll go on your show if you have one follower. He doesn't care. Like if you're interested, he'll go on your show. He doesn't care if it's like horrible quality. He doesn't care that I interrupt him all of the time.
So there's hope.
Oh yeah, man, he's amazing. If you like his information, so that's coming at the end of August. So I just kind of announcing it here because I know your folks are listening. So
Yep.
yeah, just other than that, I'm good to go, brother.
Right on, right on. Yeah. So we've been doing this on YouTube Live and over on Twitter. I'm going to try to start putting these over on, or I guess it's X now. X. X. But I think everybody's going to still call it Twitter.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you
Follow us on
hear
the
there?
Instagrams, the
Did you hear
Twitters, everywhere.
he was gonna try and combine YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook,
Yeah, yeah. Trying
and
to
he's gonna call it "You Twit Face." I'm just kidding. That's a Conan O'Brien joke. I just wanted
I wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, we're gonna try to get this info out to as many different places as we can. So wherever you're catching it, don't forget to not only catch it, but we can do the tagline, spread the fire. And
yeah.
but yeah. Join us again later on. We'll have some more talks in this area. But as I like to say, Pilgrim on, friends, and we'll see you out there
Bye.
later.